I defeated deranged Jack Smith. He's a deranged individual. I guess he's on his way back to The Hague. And we won those cases. Those were the biggest ones. And the press made such a big deal out of them, but we did nothing wrong. We did nothing wrong on anything. And the people saw that. What you're saying is I'm just hearing that they're not allowed to issue the report. So if they're not allowed to issue the report, that's the way it should be. That's great.
Eileen Canon, the judge who oversaw Trump's classified documents case in Florida, is once again stepping in to help him. She temporarily blocked the release of special counsel Jack Smith's report detailing Trump's refusal to give back that trove of classified documents that he took from the White House and just kept in his house. And now federal prosecutors are saying they do plan to hold off on releasing that part of their investigation. Now, if you will remember, Trump won the presidential election back in November, and that is when this whole saga began. Once Trump had been reelected, Jack Smith dropped both federal cases against Trump because of a longstanding DOJ policy against pursuing criminal cases against sitting presidents. But Justice Department regulations also required Smith to file a report about his work to Attorney General Merrick Garland, explaining why he brought the charges that he did. And there were 2 volumes to Jack Smith's report. One was about the classified documents case, and the other was about his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Now, last weekend, a draft of the classified documents report was shared with Trump's team. This is reporting from the New York Times. It says Trump's lawyer wrote a letter to Garland arguing that the draft they had seen was one-sided and a lawless political stunt designed to politically harm President Trump. The lawyers also complained that the draft made baseless attacks on other anticipated members of President Trump's incoming administration. Then on Tuesday, Judge Canon issued the injunction blocking it from coming out. So, in their court filing on Wednesday, prosecutors acknowledged that publicly releasing the volume about the classified documents case was legally problematic. That was because even though Trump's role in the matter has ended, the case is still active with regard to his 2 co-defendants, Walt Nauta and Carlos de Oliveira, and any new revelations about it could harm their efforts to defend themselves. So Garland decided not to release a classified documents report until all proceedings against Nauta and de Oliveira are over, except that process is probably going to continue into Trump's second term. And as president, he could choose to just pardon those 2 men and end the case altogether, which means we probably will never get to see what was in that report. But do not forget, there were 2 volumes to Jack Smith's report, and the Department of Justice does intend to release the second part to the public and to Congress despite Trump's protests. And this is the one about Trump's efforts to overturn the loss of the 2020 election. When exactly it will be released and whether it'll contain any new damning information is still unclear. But John, we knew that this was coming the moment we saw those election results pouring in. Of course, it's very frustrating because so much time and money has been spent on these cases, not to mention all of the emotional labor that people across the country have put into them. Other nations have dealt with similar scenarios, and it didn't take them 4 years to investigate and prosecute them. There is more to this story, but I got to ask, was it all for nothing?
That's a depressing question. It often feels like that's the question that's most applicable about basically everything in our politics. I don't think so. I think, even the ultimately unsuccessful efforts to get the facts out and to hopefully get consequences for Donald Trump's illegal acts almost certainly had an effect on the election. It's very easy to look at it and be like, well, he still got elected, so what was the difference? But, margin of victory matters, coattails matter, the effect on the Senate and the House, state legislative races, all of that still does matter. And also, I think, because I'm not a member of the MAGA movement, I think facts matter in their own right. I think the truth is an important thing. I think it's worth knowing what's actually going on. Obviously, Donald Trump feels very differently about his base. He doesn't want them to know a damn thing about all that he did. One would think that for a guy who claims he hasn't broken any laws, he's really doing a lot to hide what was discovered from his base. Weird that doesn't bother them more. But you mentioned in the beginning there, you said, not super surprising. And the abstract outcome that something was done that stops consequences for Trump, at least for a while, is certainly not surprising. The part of it that was surprising to me was Eileen Cannon. Like, she's popping back. I thought you were done. I thought you already did all the damage you can do. Give someone else a chance to corrupt the system and protect the rich and well-connected from consequences. I don't even know what part she has in any of this. Like, didn't she shut down all the stuff she was involved in? But look, maybe she doesn't think that she clinched a nomination of the Supreme Court yet, and she needs to try to do a little bit more to make sure that that happens. But anyway, all of this, not just what she did, but now, there's 20 different things that judges and the SCOTUS have done, that Merrick Garland did to protect him. All of it is utterly corrupt. We have, very different justice systems depending on who you are and how rich you are. It doesn't bother the MAGA movement or conservatives, but it definitely should, because this is the greatest evidence of the point that they always make, that there's a deep state, that there are elites. This is the proof of the thesis that they keep saying. They just don't mind because it's Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, the things don't apply to him. And, we were talking about working hard during the break. No one works harder at not doing her job than Aileen Cannon, and she is working for that Supreme Court nod. So we'll see how that goes for her, I guess. But Trump's legal woes don't end with all of that, right? There's more. Because now he's also asking the Supreme Court to step in to delay his sentencing in the hush money case, which is supposed to take place on Friday. This is from the Washington Post. It says, in their petition late Tuesday, Trump's attorneys told the Supreme Court that the president-elect is immune from criminal proceedings and that his sentencing should be postponed while his appeals continue to prevent grave injustice and harm to the institution of the presidency and the operations of the federal government. The judge in the case, Juan Merchan, he has rejected the president-elect's immunity claims, and a state appeals court judge on Tuesday denied Trump's request to stay the sentencing, which is why he's now turning to the Supreme Court. If they don't intervene and the sentencing happens, Trump will be formally classified as a felon before taking office. John, what do you think the likelihood of something like this is, that it would happen? The Supreme Court definitely seems to be friendly to Trump, but they have surprised us before. Maybe I'm being a little optimistic, but what do you think?
That I think that what would happen, that they indefinitely suspend the sentencing?
That they give Trump what he asked for, right? Otherwise, he's going to be a felon and the president, and we've never had a situation like that before.
Okay, so I often feel now, especially after the election, I feel simultaneously way too cynical and way too naive at the exact same time, because I guess I expect that anything they can do to protect him from consequences, they will do. But that said, especially in the early part of last year, there were some things the Supreme Court did that did not give him what he wanted. And I guess I would say, he's not going to go to prison. Whatever sentence he gets is going to be symbolic. It's going to be a label. You're a felon or whatever. It's not going to be actually taking away his freedom. It's not going to impact his wealth necessarily. Maybe there'll be a fine, I guess, but it's not going to severely impact him. It doesn't stop him from exercising power as president. So it almost seems like the perfect thing to let through, because then they get to be like, well, hey, look, we allowed him to be sentenced. Are we not merciful? Even and he is crying foul about it, but he already got the part that matters. He's not going to prison. So from the SCOTUS's point of view, from the conservatives' point of view, why not just let this through? You get to, in a very shallow way, pretend to be balanced, and it doesn't really hurt him anyway. That's what I think anyway.
Pretend to be balanced. Yeah, there's so much optics in all of this politicking that it is getting very exhausting. And I think that's a very relatable statement that you made at the beginning when you were talking, when you said that you feel just, what did you say? Naive and also just pessimistic about.
I said, yeah. I simultaneously feel too cynical and too naive.
Cynical and naive. Yeah, just because nothing that makes sense matters anymore, it seems like, right? There's all these indicators that things could go one way or the other. And then at the end of the day, someone does some backroom deal, and then this thing goes through when it really never should have gone through in the first place, right? So our job is more complicated by all these things, because our job is to look at the things in front of us and kind of analyze it and, look at historical information and like things that we know from our own personal lived experiences and from our educational backgrounds and all these things, and make educated, informed analyses of what's going on in the world and in the country. And it was like, we can't even do that anymore because none of that even matters, right? Because every conclusion that you come to, it's like, well, this is probably what should happen. In any other year, decade, this is probably what would have happened, but who knows? Because all of everything these days is unprecedented. So what a fun time. What a fun time for us to be doing this job too, John. You've been doing it a lot longer than me though, so you would know.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to the next 4 years.